Hello, my sunrays. I'm sorry about not updating this one. Some things happened over the weekend, and I just didn't get a chance to. Um, but I hope you are having a good night or day. And let's just get into this. This is It's a Small World by Emphasis on Ghost Rider. I will be finishing chapter 3 today and chapter 4. I hope you enjoy. And do mind that my videos are going to be a little longer now since I'm putting chapters together, not just doing one by one. So just be prepared. And you can probably see it by the link of the video, but I just wanted to. And the link is in the description, both of them. I keep on forgetting to say that part. That's why I've been putting in the comments that they're in the description, because I keep on forgetting to tell you guys that it is in the description. But let's get into this. Izuku had always had food on the table, had food, clothes, anything he needed for school, and she oddly even kept buying him All Might merchandise from time to time, maybe to make herself feel like she was still somewhat a decent mother. Izuku wasn't sure, but he basically raised himself After that, she didn't notice when the bullying at school got worse either. He had started seeing her less and less. Around the age of 8, money seemed accumulated by short notes, accumulated by short notes being left on the counter for him. So he stopped spending so much time at their apartment when he wasn't in school. A lot of it was spent in the local library, where the librarians thought he was adorable and were more than happy to help him find resources or information on whatever the latest thing he had struck his fancy. Zoo soaked up information like a sponge, and they basically taught him nothing at school anyway. Their coding classes geared towards preteens. They let him join even though he was younger, where I do entirely what intently what got him into coding. And when he taught himself more on his own, and then he taught himself more on his own, he could even start. He even started a quark science and analyst blog that started to pick up traction. He was just ecstatic to finally have a place where his ramblings weren't seen as creepy. It's also where he was introduced to the underground/online Quarkless community. He'd already been aware of online spaces for people with quirks that were often discriminated against, usually also called villainous, and mutant quirks. But he never realized the quirkless community was also established till another quirkless Patreon figured out he didn't know and pulled him aside one evening to show him where to find it. Honestly, it was life-changing for him. Suddenly he had access to a community he hadn't known he needed and resources he'd later need to rely on. It's how he found the dojo. He found it when he was 9, and it was on a smaller side, about 20-minute walk from his house, and it was was one of few places that didn't care or ask about people's quirk status. Izuku started learning self-defense there first, hoping it could help him with the ever increasing bullying at school. It it didn't. He was just punished more by the teachers. He later moved on to various forms of martial arts. When he was 10, he came home with a note to tell from Inko telling him Hizashi had offered her to fly her to America to start over with him, but that she'd pay for the rest of the lease and left him food in the fridge and more money than usual on the counter. He hadn't known how to feel about the fact he was honestly more surprised she had even left a note instead of just leaving. By then, though, he'd had years to teach himself advanced coding and hacking and knew far more about how the internet and the world work than a kid his age should. Once he got over the eternal shock and panic, he got to work. He didn't bother going to school, though he was later able to set himself up an online school. He knew at some point he'd need a documentation of actually finishing classes, and it's not like the classes were hard. He doubted they would even care enough to call it Inko's anyway, and focused on selling as much hero merch and furniture as he could without drawing too much attention to himself as he could, so he could get as much money as possible and make the appropriate bank accounts, etc. He needed to keep it in. With some hacking, of course. They just weren't going to give a 10-year-old a bank account. He used those funds to buy himself a good, solid laptop and computer setup. If he was going to be hacking that much, he needed to have devices he could do it from safely. He also moved from slightly running a Quark Science / Analyze blog to selling Quark Analyst. It started slowly, but by the time he was forced to find his own, cheaper apartment in the sketchier neighborhood, it had been at least somewhat sketchy to pull off being able to rent it as an unoccupied 10-year-old that combined with a working part-time under the table at the dojo helping clean, organize, and set things up. He was mostly able to support himself. Sorry, I got a text message. Ultimately, becoming Ghost had been one of the slimmer process of his life. He had been walking back to the apartment from the dojo one day and came across a girl not much older than him getting mugged. His feet moved before he knew what he was doing, and he was able to knock the mugger out before he even knew Izuku was there. After that, he started to keep an eye out for similar people in need and just sort of turned into a vigilante, but only when he knew it was a situation he could actually handle, and the cops/heroes wouldn't get there on time. Everything only snowballed after the fateful run-in with Eraserhead. It was stressful and more and more than a little terrifying. But he made it work. The only other option was the streets. He knew he'd never survive being sent to foster care. He also tried not to think too hard about some of the analysts he was selling. He knew there was a chance it was being used badly, but it's not like he had much of the choice. That wasn't the part That wasn't the part that was coming back to bite him in the ass now, though. The part he was hacking. Zu had been known as the infamous hacker D. Arkin for almost as long as he'd been Ghost. His escapes as D. Arkin, I hope I'm saying that right, had started as careful balancing act. As much as he tried not to think about what his analysts might be being used for, he couldn't ignore when he saw villain attacks on the news, clearly using his analyst. He'd thrown up the first time it happened. The second time, he'd created D. Arkin. Basically, he'd used the identity to keep tabs on who he's providing analysts to. He vented every client at this point, and he couldn't afford it. And when he couldn't afford it, he turned down those who were obviously villains. When he couldn't, he acted as Diartemis to bring them down before they could hurt anyone, after being paid, of course. That's where the balancing act came in. Making sure the actions as Diartemis couldn't be tracked back to his analyst business. Bracing bracking out his work as Artemis helped finding other criminal organizations and corruption to bring to light. Literally, in some cases, going to the media instead of going to the cops wouldn't work. They wouldn't listen. Or when the corrupted party in question, it was held. It went what held to D. Artemis being as infamous as he was. The media had a field day every time he made a waves, and no one wanted to be on his radar. He loved being D. Artemis as much as he loved being Ghost, but he never forgotten how D. Artemis was born. He didn't know if his heroes would still care about him if they knew he'd, even accidentally, even if he had no choice, helped villains. Didn't know if they could. It particularly even made him a villain too. He couldn't be arrested for vigilantism since he didn't have a quirk, but he could possibly be arrested for admitting villainy. He hoped they could. They worked for Nezu, who was far more accomplished hacker than Izuku could ever hope to be after all. But he couldn't know for sure, and he couldn't bring himself to take that risk, especially since one of Aizawa's closest friends was Tsukauchi, a detective with a lie detecting quirk. Izuku actually liked Tsukauchi too. He and Aizawa often interacted with the man on patrols. It was always nerve-wracking because the wrong thing said in front of him had the potential to ruin everything. But he was a solid detective and a good man. Izuku wouldn't be opposed to seeing him as an uncle if things were different. He desperately wanted the dream that Aizawa had painted for him, though. He could hardly believe it at first that someone Izuku had allowed Eraserhead to take him to Recover Girl. They'd met him the neutral third location. Anywhere else would have been too hard for Izuku to get away from, and they decided to hand him over to the proper authorities was because he was one of the few heroes who'd ever been approved as a safe on the Quirkless forums. That and he had made it very clear he wasn't going to leave Izuku cave to seek some form of medical treatment after Izuku woke up in his improm nap post kiss on the hand from a recovery girl. The man just given him a first aid kit from his utility out and sent him on his way. Izuku hadn't been expecting that, nor had he been expecting the man to show up. At first it was random run-ins, then it started giving Izuku supplies, which turned into short conversations. Some of which made Izuku wonder if he was just repurposed day-to-day of school icebergs and was a teacher after all. Around the point Izuku finally started accepting food from the man, usually cooked by his husband. Izuku ate homemade food cooked by Eraserhead's husband. He gave Izuku his name, his full name, Aizawa Shouta, and a name to call his husband by, Zashi, with permission from his husband. So he wasn't just constantly referring to a husband out in public when he was in uniform, and anyone could possibly overhear them. Neither of them even minded that Izuku never gave his. Izuku hadn't expected to meet the clearly civilian present Mike for the first time. Aizawa was supposed to bring him a meal and couldn't be able to. He texted Izuku ahead of time that Zashi would be waiting at their spot just in case, but Izuku wouldn't have to show up if he was uncomfortable. But he hadn't wanted to break his word to Ghost, even if Aizawa couldn't show up. So yeah, Izuku had realized when a while back he trusted both of these men, and he saw Aizawa as a father figure, and the man likely saw him as a son. Izuku didn't miss Aizawa hiding a smile on his capture weapon every time he said it in the first few months he started using it. He just didn't know what to do about it. Thoughts still going in circles. Exhaustion eventually overcame him, and Izuku finally drifted off. In a few hours, he woke up. He'd find himself facing an empty fridge in the apartment, finally remembering the groceries he'd lost the day before. In a few months, he'd find himself facing the events that would change everything. That was chapter 3. This will be chapter 4, Entrance Exam Part 1. Chat names. The full list, though not every character was present today. Midoriya Izuku, kittycatclaws, Shinso Hitoshi, purrple, Monoma Neito, copycat, Yamada Hizashi, loud and proud, Aizawa Shouta, actually asleep, Tsukauchi Naomasa, hatman, and Ashido Mina, alienqueen. 10 months later. Shouta. Actually asleep. I would like to make a request. 1, copycat. What? Hard-headed. Is everything okay at actually asleep? Hatman. Who is... Oh. Hatman. Seconding Hardman, you good? Loud and proud. At actually asleep. Request denied. Also, look at what you've done. You've created the mods. Loud and proud. At Hardhead, it's fine. He's just he's just belly aching about the meeting we have to attend tomorrow. Copycat. LAMO. Actually asleep. At Hardhat. Apologies. I did not mean to concern anyone. There's just not enough coffee in the world to deal with my insufferable coworkers tomorrow. There's a new one, and he's extra idiotic. Hatman, understandable, loud and proud. At least you don't have to present. Hardhead, good to hear, and good luck with your presentation out loud and proud. Loud and proud. Thanks. Copycat. It's times like these I'm glad I'm not old. Loud and proud. Hey now. Hatman. Enjoy it while it lasts. Actually asleep. Don't you have homework to do? Copycat. No, it's entrance exam season, since I have one tomorrow. Alienqueen. OMG, me too. I'm super nervous. I really want to get in. Copycat. Um, Kami. Oh, Kami. Same. Loud and proud. Good luck, you two. Hatman. Good luck for me too. From me too. But I have to get back to work now. Copycat. TY. Alienqueen. Thanks. Bye, Hatman. Actually, sleep. I'm sure you'll both do fine. I gotta get going now. Aizawa backed out of the chat as more of the users came. The strange age range popping in, discussing the entrance exam with minimal detail. His own nephew, Hitoshi, had taken the recommendation exam and the previous day with his mom, Shota's sister, and taken him out for a celebratory dinner after he'd passed with flying colors. Probably why he wasn't online harassing the adults about the other younger hooligans in the chat like normal. It was a local group, yes, but that was far as any of them knew each other. They came together online for a sense of community, but always had the edge of privacy. It wasn't it wouldn't do to share too much information and get hacked or have trolls slide into the darting box and start boxing people. Not everyone had the same capabilities of protecting themselves like Hizashi and Naomasa had. Though everyone did either have some balls to do so. The three could certainly make sure they faced opportunal legal consequences. Appropriate. Appropriate. A couple hours later, Shouta, partway through his patrol of the night, accompanied by a far too hyped-up vigilante, wanted to know what he was. He was, in fact, fairly smart. He wanted it to be known that he was, in fact, very smart. You didn't get to the point of being one of the top underground heroes in a community without being able to use your head, much less become one of Nezu's personal students. He also liked to think he knew Ghost pretty well at this point, or at least his mannerisms, and tonight there was absolutely no doubt the kid was a jittery mess. It read more excitement than nervousness, though, thankfully. So, are you going to tell me what's up with you, or are you just going to keep bouncing off the walls? Shota finally asked, about halfway through their patrol. He meant it that literally, too. Just as they were making their way to the roof, and Ghost had bounced between two buildings for its descent. I have no idea what you're talking about, Razor, the vigilante sassed as they took off the next block. Sure you don't. 10 o'clock. He pointed out someone breaking into a car on the street. Got it! Ghost peeled out ahead of him, making quick work of the would-be car thief. Breathe, problem child. Eraser called when the kid was as bouncy as hell after that. If you don't chill out, you're gonna run out of energy before the patrol ends. Besides, it's good to always good time to as any to have a break. The reflective visor stared back at him silently for a moment as Shota pulled two jelly packets from his pocket and kept them in. From the pocket he kept them in. Fine. Ghost finally cap conceptual com, slinging the packet snatching the packet out of the air when Shota threw it to him. I doubt I'd run out of energy. I actually need to take off early tonight. Probably an hour or so. Not like you're beholding to a schedule. Shota leaned up against the wall to the access door of a building they were on. Weird roof gravel crunching under his boots. That basically confirmed his suspicion. The kid never willingly gave up patrol time. The U.S. exams were bearing down on them, and the kid was right. The kid was the right age for it. Potentially, even the kid and the server from earlier. Miraculously, at least some of them would be there. Statistically, at least some of them would be there. Shota desperately wanted to ask if he'd be there too, but the kid had shut him down hard enough one of the times he asked about him potentially. Potentially attending UA earlier on in the relationship. He had wanted to rock the boat again. He hadn't wanted to rock the boat again. They also never asked it, but they both knew if the kid was joining the UA, Shota would figure out who he was. He knew how Ghost moved and fought, and you might have a face obscuring helmet now, might have had it for several years, but he hadn't always. Shota barely remembered the dark circles under his eyes, the hurt 11-year-old he had first met. He got a glimpse of mostly, honestly adorable, faded smile every time the mouthguard came down to the kitty. It wouldn't take long for him to be recognized, and Ghost still wasn't ready for him to know his actual identity. The kid deserved the ability to make that reveal on his own terms. So Shota didn't ask, just let it remain unspoken that if Shota did knock him at the entrance exam, he'd keep his silence. It would be better in the long run if the kid could get his license, regardless of the fact he couldn't technically be charged for vigilantism. And like hell, he was going to be the one to stand in the way if attending UA was what he wanted to do. He he had very much hoped to see the familiar faded smile in the hallways tomorrow, though. There was absolutely no doubt his favorite problem child was going to be an absolute terror out in the cityscape and ended up in, and Shota needed something to look forward to if he wanted to deal how long the next day was going to be. Izuku. Fuck. Shit. Fuck. Izuku was trying very hard not to panic. Today was the UA entrance exam, and he was running late. The most important day of the year, one of the defining days of his life, and he was risking missing it entirely. If he missed this train, he barely have enough time to get dressed and double, triple check the bag he packed the night before that he had everything. He hoped to get rid of some nervous energy during the patrol the night before, but hadn't been successful, probably because even until his alarm went off this morning, Izuku wasn't sure if he was actually going to show, and wrestled with himself with fourth on the matter that had kept him well past when he wanted to be asleep. Thank Kami for the bottle of coffee he kept in his fridge for emergencies. The exam itself was stressful, though. Well, it's not exam. Izzy was confident in his abilities both on the written portion. By now, he'd already graduated high school online and was enrolling in whatever college courses online struck his fancy. He wasn't afraid to admit he was a massive nerd and loved learning everything he could. And the physical for the hero course, vigilante, but just be taken. Sorry. Where did it go? Where was I? Oh, there it was. Whoever decided to put this kind of do or die moment on his shoulders of a 14-year-old was an idiot, and Izuku wanted to talk to them about it, he promised. There was also many things that could happen outside the exam, and not all of them he was sure he'd mentally prepare for. Foremost in his mind was the fact Aizawa was 100% going to be watching the exam, the physical portion without doubt. He did teach the heroics course after all, with Izuku, and Izuku figured there was a chance he had somehow kept his eyes on the entrance written exam too, in case anyone tried to use quirks to cheat. He hoped that Aizawa recognized him, the man would be nice enough to keep it to himself. Izuku had been too scared to broach the topic, though. There it is. He had also spent that much time around many kids, hadn't spent that much time around his kids since he stopped going to Aldera, which was nerve-wracking on its own, but also brought up the second issue, Bakugo. He'd stopped calling him Kachan unless they were around one of their parents a few years after his diagnosis. There was no way he wasn't going to be at the entrance exam today. He had no idea he was going to be the blonde recognized him and wanted a confirmation. Luckily, he'd caught up to the train a few seconds to spare, crouching down in the seat with relief as the quadruple checked his bag again. Quadruple checked his bag again. Then pulled out his phone and checked the messages that had been blowing up. Most of them were ideally of good luck on the server from the kids taking entrance exam today. UA wasn't the only one with exam schedules today, just the only hero school. But there were also a few requests for quirk analysts and a message for Dear Archmus in his inbox. He swiped away the notifications for those, though. He checked them later when he wasn't in public and didn't have the visibility of his phone, just in case before putting his phone away. He loved the group chat, families, shenanigans, but right now he needed to focus. He sat up against his seat. He settled up against his seat, back straight, hands on knees, flat feet on the floor, to do some breathing exercise before they got to his stop. If he was going to make it there through the day, he needed to be able to keep his wits about him getting a game face on. The entrance exam was never going to know what hit it, and nerves aside, it was going to be fun. One saving grace of the day was that the sitting charts on both exams were set up in the middle of the school, and Izuku had attended online, so that kept him farther away from the potential Bakugo encounter. Instead, he found himself sitting towards the back of the auditorium amongst a group of other kids who didn't have school uniforms. He had decided to wear his nicest pair of pants and button down. One of his workout outfits was squashed into his bag, of course. First impressions matter, and he always wanted to make a good one. The written portion itself was mostly laughably easy. Zio checked over every necessary answer twice. It was still less than an hour since they'd started. He tapped his eraser of his pencil against the desk while staring blankly out at the front of the auditorium, debating between boredom of sitting here with nothing to do but check over his answer a third time and the attention of surely drawing himself if he turned his paper in now and leave for the exam hall early. He froze when a familiar red eyes of eraser swept over him, proving he'd been right about the man checking for quirk use to cheat on the test. The hero was nestled up in the rigid holding the lights of the stage, dark clothes and hair blending in the shadows there. Although to keep there enough to keep most people who weren't specifically looking for him from noticing him. Izuku had happened to glance up at the right time to catch the bright red stare of Aizawa, since I wasn't keeping it up, just going to the occasional glance over the test takers, probably both to avoid dry eye as much as possible and avoid attracting attention from the students below. The gaze hadn't flickered when Izuku had glanced up, so Aizawa probably hadn't taken particular notice of him mixed in with everyone else, which was good, but now Izuku definitely couldn't turn in his paper early without being noticed. Shit. Sighing, he turned back to the first page, checking over it again and waiting for at least 5 people to turn in theirs first. That would be a safe enough number. This was going to be a long day. Everyone's favorite loud cockatoo gets introduced next chapter. Feet, Grumpy, Morning Aizawa. Also some other group chats. Also, Hizashi used present. Also, Hizashi used present BC pun. Tsukauchi and Aizawa, who's visiting his office before Troll. I can't believe you're married to them. Aizawa sipping his coffee. To be fair, I didn't have a choice in the matter. They latched on and wouldn't let go. He's also very pretty. Tsukauchi, you get your happy ass out of my office and go feed your kid. Izuku's anxiety aside, Tsukauchi 100% on board in the adoption plan Adopt Ghost, and Sansa both adore the kid. He will eventually be a cool uncle and doesn't know it yet, or even understand how cool, but he'll take it. That was chapters 3 and 4 of It's a Small World by Emphasis on Ghostwriter. I hope you enjoyed, and the links are down in the description again. And I will see you next time. So there's something else I wanted to say. So Dust Your Wings Off As You Rise, the re-recording. I'm waiting for the thumbnail to get done because I can't record something without being in the intro first. It's just weird for me, and I need to know what the art looks like so I can say what I think of it in the intro, because that's what I want to do, and I'm in no rush to re-record this. I hope you understand that. Um, yeah, I will see you all next time.